the younger Ayanda was very into, I would not even use this term, but it is what it is, people pleasing. So I met my husband 2016 because we got married 2018. So I met him 2016. Now we were at a church conference. I love how my husband explains it. There's 4 key things he looks at. What are your values? Because those don't change. Are you a passionate, driven person? Are you close to your family? And yes, marriage is about compromising, but I don't think you need to compromise who you are. Another thing that I'm doing, walking to my 30s, I'm just getting to a point of saying no is enough of an answer. And I'm a mom.
Yes, congratulations.
First priority. God has called you, wonderfully, purposely made. Meditate in that scripture. You haven't heard of my podcast, so make sure you go search, equip, and elevate. There's so many exciting things career-wise. If that friendship for that season, it was what it was. I don't need to keep holding on to that if it's no longer a friendship for this season.
Welcome to Navigating the Twenties. You're with me, Zinhle Navazi, and today I've got the privilege of interviewing one of the most phenomenal women. She's a game changer in the tech space, and obviously you've probably heard of her podcast, Equip and Elevate. I'm talking about Ayanda Vana. Ayanda Vana is an attorney of the South African High Court. She's the COO of Khula, which is an agri-tech company, and of course she's the founder and podcast host of Equip and Elevate. In today's discussion, we speak about our friendship since high school. We go into a lot of interesting insights, like for instance, if you are looking to get married, you're navigating dating, you're navigating career transitions, or if you're confused about whether you're in the right career, this is the conversation for you. If you're looking to know a little bit more about Ayanda, we go into her personal life as well as her career life. So if this sounds like the podcast for you, you want to tune in for the rest of the conversation with Ayanda Vana. Hi, Ayanda. Welcome to Navigating the Twenties. It's
really excited to be here, and well done on this platform. It's so exciting what you're doing.
Thank you. I got inspired by you because obviously with Equip and Elevate and how it's taken off, and even with pre-COVID, I think we planned to start a podcast, and this eventually is like a long post-COVID dream of mine. But I specifically wanted you on the podcast because I think I would say you are my longest childhood friend because you're the only one that's stuck.
Mine too. I'm like, I don't think I have anyone. No, you are the longest.
Yeah.
We were like 14.
Yes. Actually, do you remember the day we first met?
I know. I'll never forget. Zinhle was guys, Zintle's always been confident. I remember we're in grade 7.
Yeah.
We're doing an interview to get into a specific boarding school. And I think they were asking us questions with our parents. And our parents had to leave, I think, at some stage.
Yes.
And then you were always confident. I think I was a little bit shy, but I think you were very confident. I mean, there was a in our interview, and then fast forward the next year we're in the same hostel, and then we didn't initially get along.
No, we didn't. But do you know what was weird in the interview? Because there was the third girl, the one that kept speaking about front stroke instead of freestyle, and I remember looking at Jill, I was like, oh, she's also laughing as well. So it was like, and that for me was funny because throughout varsity, I'd find something funny and I would just look at you and I knew you got it without me having to explain.
Some people are like, don't look at you. I'm not looking. I don't want to be that person because if I look at you, it's late for the next person.
Yeah. And I think it's very beautiful how you've evolved. And so I think one of the themes we will later speak about is like the difficulty of friendship. Like, I think throughout the years, when I say you literally the only one that stayed, is that I would meet people, form very strong bonds with them, but then it wouldn't last. It was almost like everyone had an expiry date. And even if I would say that I wasn't continuously best friends with you, you were always in my life. And now, like, fast forward, it's like, how many years ago? It's like 11 maybe. No, is it more? Because it's 16 years. It's like about 16 years. Yeah, geez, time goes. Exactly. I've got a feeling we're going to age well. But I want to start by having a conversation around identity and who you are. If you look at who you've become now, like the woman in front of me now, do you think this is who you've always envisioned you'd one day be?
Sure. I don't think this is who I envisioned I would one day be. I think there's been a lot of like self-discovery. I think there's been a lot of reflection on growth in me becoming, and I think it's been a long life journey. Not even long life, because I've only been living for a short period of time. But I think in those years I've allowed myself to grow and evolve. I think the young Ayanda was very into, I would not even use this term, but it is what it is, people pleasing, you know. And what that does, it robs you from being your full self. It robs you from pursuing things that are important to you, because you're thinking about everyone else around you. And that sometimes hinders your journey, because you're so focused on, is this person okay? And I think that for me was something that I would confuse that with kindness and grace, but it wasn't kindness and grace. It was actually people pleasing. I think the person I am right now is completely different, but I am proud of the journey of where I am. I am proud of, you know, how I've allowed myself to grow. I've allowed myself to evolve. I've allowed myself to look at what is my purpose, what is the key to me, or my core values. But one thing I would say that has been consistent, or not even consistent, in knowing who I would become right now, is purpose. I think that triumphs everything else, because one thing I knew is that, you know, my purpose is to impact people's lives. And what that looks like is irrespective of my vocation. It's irrespective of what I'm currently doing at that stage. Every time I do something, I look back to say, how has that impacted someone's life? In a small scale or in a bigger scale. And I think that for me, that's the Ayanda I know that I was meant to be. But I think everything else that has come with my personality, that has come with developing and evolving and growth and being self-aware, that is not, you know, when I look at myself now, definitely not. But yeah, I think for me, that has just been how the journey has looked like.
You touched on like something that struck me there when you say finding purpose. I think purpose is so difficult, and maybe you go through different transformation of what purpose looks like, or what purpose is. How do you find, or like what gives you navigation to say, like, I'm walking in purpose, or like this is not it, especially if you're still dealing with the voice of like people pleasing and as well as expectations. Like I find, like with my mom, as much as she intended to do well, sometimes people will lay a certain perception on you and think like, oh, you should be a lawyer, or you should walk a certain route, and they mean well, but they're actually deviating you off purpose. And you need to be strong enough to go back and centralize yourself and say, but what is in accordance with where I'm supposed to be? What is God's purpose for my life? So how did you, with all the pressure coming from it, because you had to change careers as well, and you're not traditionally where, if somebody had looked at your trajectory, you're not where you're supposed to be.
I didn't even think I would be there. You told me in my final year of varsity, when we were doing all these cases and case law and memorizing, getting excited about contract law, that fast forward then you're going to be an agri and tech. I would have laughed at you. I would have said, that's a joke. What do you mean? What is tech? You know, for me, it's just like, I think of Apple, I think of, you know, it would have never been something that I would have imagined myself being in that kind of space. But I think what has been so key in that is that every time I would make a decision, I will evaluate that, is it core, does it reflect my core values? Because it's very important to honor my decisions, to honor my purpose. And even if it's not sort of the traditional thing. And, you know, sometimes I feel that, you know, we have a perception of what life is meant to look like, and then God surprises you. And sometimes you have a certain plan, because my plan, for instance, was to be in Khula for 1 year. And then after that, I'll see where I go and what I want to do. A month in, I was like, I'm not going anywhere. And that's because I think more than anything, my heart was open to be present in that journey, to be present in that space, to be present on how I can be giving with my talents, how I can be giving with what I've been entrusted with when I come into this organization. But in terms of having to overcome people's expectations, I know my dad still today, he's like, so you're not going to be a Thuli Madonsela? I'm like, no. I was telling him, because in my class, because I'm doing my master's in digital business. Like, the minister, this is in my class. Minister, this is in my class. It's like, why are they doing law? I'm like, I'm not doing my master's in law. I've told you this so many times. I'm doing my master's to the Wits Business School. Not law. I'm not in the law faculty. So my mom will always say, he still has his moments of like, she really is not going to be an attorney. And in my family, they still call me advocate. And I'm just like, I wish you guys knew that an advocate
and an attorney are two different things.
Advocate. And I'm just like, I'm not that.
But you know what? We forgive them because it's the idea that you're going to be the first black female attorney in the family. So they hold it with pride and they mean well. But But
I think it was very important to stay true to what was important to me at that stage. And I think one thing I love about our parents, what they've done is they've given us the ability to have freedom to choose what we want to be. They never got to do that. They had to do jobs that paid for school fees, that paid for food, paid for rent, or paid for a bond, and made sure they were supporting their families. They had to make those sacrifices. I mean, my mom was telling me the other day that, there was a stage in her life where she got a job. For the long time she was unemployed. She got a job, and it was so far. She had to walk like 45 minutes to get to work, and there were no taxis around because she lived in town. And she was separated from us for 2 years. So we'd see her every weekend because the job was not like around there. It was quite far. And at this time we were 9 or 10, I can't remember. But that's because they were making decisions based on what provision looks like for them in terms of their families. A lot of the careers they chose were from a space of what is going to pay. And even if I wake up every morning and I'm not passionate about this, it doesn't matter because my passion maybe lies in investing in my family. I think Michelle Obama once said that a lot of our parents didn't invest in properties, black parents, because the investment was in our education.
Absolutely.
That's their investment.
Literally.
And that's literally what our parents' investments. They don't maybe own a lot of properties. But one thing they can say, I invested in this person and that was their education. That was my investment, not property.
You literally gave me goosebumps because if I think about it, I'm like, from schools to be able to go to the best schools, like your parents had to be like, are you in the right? And remember, there was still that feeder system. So you needed to live like in the vicinity of that. And then it's being able to afford the school fees and still being able to be like, my child needs to go to university. And if you said, I want to do a 5-year degree, sacrifices would be made just so that you can graduate.
Exactly. And I think that what has come with that freedom, as like my parents worked hard for me to, one, be in a position where I'm able to sustain my lifestyle, but also not to be in the same cycle as they were in. I'm able to choose and pave the way that I feel my life and my career can look like. It doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be what, our society tells me. If I wake up and I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and I'm filled with joy, and I know I'm operating from purpose, that for me is so much better than living a life that met the expectations, like being so unhappy and basically living the life that they were living, but doing maybe a certain kind of job. So for me, that's something that I wake up with. And I always tell my mom, do you know how much joy I have in my life? If I reach in there, I would be so unhappy. And I'm just like, that's the freedom they've given us.
Literally.
And I think that's something that they should called on to. And I was telling Mama, you guys need to be proud of that. You need to be proud of that. You've enabled us to be in that kind of position. To be like, actually, I am more than capable. I am able to do things that are not like this. I don't have to be scared that if I don't say yes to this role, that I'll never be able to do certain things in life. I will be able to do that because I know I've got the drive and the passion, and this is where I'm going right now.
And Ayanda, or maybe it has been a journey like from articles to command a certain level of, I know what I'm capable of, I know who I am, because like we both went through articles and most people get crushed. Like, what helps you to sustain the confidence to say, as a black woman, I'll firstly always be proud of the fact that I'm a black woman coming from this background, and secondly, I'll never let somebody demean or deplete me or convince me that I'm not capable of anything else? Because there are quite a few of our listeners that are doing articles, and I've even had inboxes where people go, how do you survive articles without being crushed?
When I go back to articles, they were not easy. And I look at, can I tell you, actually one thing about Uzinhle right now, she's always been confident. When I was in our interview and we went when we were 13, you were so confident. Maybe you didn't see it.
Yeah.
If it's a facade you're doing it well. Because I was just like, oh, this girl, she's probably so smart. She's probably like this. You've always been so confident. And I think one thing that I would do differently, but I'm grateful for that experience. It taught me something. I would really go in knowing that, man, I'm more than capable. I am qualified. I deserve to be here. Because sometimes when we doing your articles, the biggest obstacle is not the work, it's your self-confidence.
Literally.
In terms of how you see yourself in that space. Because you're told that, a lot of people applied, you know how lucky you are to be here. Then you feel like, am I deserving to be here?
Yeah.
Were there better people out there?
Yeah.
Because I'm a black woman, was it a BE quota thing?
Yeah.
You know, all of these things. But then I think one thing I would really start with is like, you deserve to be in that space. You are qualified. You worked hard to be in that space. And waking up with that conviction every single day, because what that does, it translates into confidence. Then that confidence is seen through your work.
Absolutely.
Because if you're going to second guess every single thing you're working on because of your confidence, you're not going to progress like maybe your other colleagues that are
other counterparts.
That are not who you, that don't fit your description of who you are. And I think that's very clear out there if you know what I'm talking about. And so for me, that's something that I would do differently, because that's where I was in that space. I remember I used to pray and say, God, qualify me. Because I'll be like, I would feel like I wasn't qualified to be in that space.
Sure.
I would feel like I was not worthy to be in that space. And I really spent a lot of times in dwelling in that, which meant that I didn't feel like my work was good enough. And when it was good enough, I didn't believe it was me. It's like, no, it's all external factors. That's why I did well. And it was never because Ayanda worked hard. Ayanda, you know, she studied this degree. She understands this work and she applied herself. It was all the external factors. And I think another key thing I would do differently, all those negative thoughts you have of yourself, replace that with God's promises for your life and positive affirmations from what the word says. God has called you, you're wonderfully, purposely made. Meditate in that scripture. If it's something you struggle with every single day, 5 minutes, read what God says. Because once you gain confidence, when you work on your self-esteem, I'm telling you, you would walk into that door with so much confidence. Because I look at it right now when I'm working. Where I'm working. I don't know anything about agri when I first started.
Exactly.
And yes, it took time for me to heal from how I felt before. It was not an instant, yes, I'm confident. But the minute I got to that level of awareness of like, man, I bring this and this to the table. The conversation is different with the people around the table. People see you differently because you are confident in what you're doing. So I think for me, that's something that for anyone that's doing articles, and if you struggle with that black woman, work on that. Because if you can really work on that, that will change so many things. I remember I have a friend and she's like, she has like 20 years experience. She's a chartered accountant, and she's speaking to another male counterpart about why you look like you know what you're doing. And then the guy was like, you look like you know what you're doing. So she was saying like, man, you're so great at what you do. You look like you really know what you're doing. What's your secret? What do you do when you get home? And he's like, let me tell you a secret. Me and you, I don't know anything, but I walk in there like I know what I'm doing. And I think that's so important. Everyone is trying to navigate, and it's that distinguishing factor is really knowing how to carry yourself in those spaces.
Absolutely. Like I think when you're speaking about that journey, because I even remember when I was in articles, I was just going through the most. I was like facing racism and stuff. And I remember one day I just prayed and I was like, God, if this is if this is my purpose, then like help me out, like make things easier. But if it's not, like give me the courage to just walk away. Because I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I understand that like becoming an attorney is important, but if I have to suffer this much, because you're right, like it gets into your psyche, you start self-doubting yourself. You start thinking you're stupid because somebody's always been like, are you doing this correctly? Like, do you even know what you're doing? And they're constantly undermining those thoughts. So to retape or fix that tape that's in your head and put positive affirmations, like you're saying, like say what God's plan is for your life, and it's always in the positive. He's never made plans to harm you or to put you in positions that would otherwise be detrimental to you. So that really helps. And I think it's sad, I don't know, with your journey, do you feel like other black women supported you? I have this thing where I'm just like, as black women, and I'll be very honest, there are certain black women that I am jealous of when I look at them, but it's never like, oh my goodness, I don't want them to do well, so I'll do everything in my power to put them down. It's more like, I want what you have. And so for me, it would be more like, let me get closer to that person's inner circle so I can also understand how to get there. But then you realize that there's so much resistance because we're all like competing and we're not helping each other out.
Yeah, and I think there's enough room for everyone on the table. I think we need to get into a spirit of collaboration over competition, because right now you want to be the only, and that's just so, already it shows me how much trauma you have. You need to go back and really work on whatever corporate has done to you, because the fact that you have such a mindset is already very unhealthy. So I know that mentally and emotionally you're not okay. You've really been broken by a corporate because you want to be the only, because you've been told that only is better than having other people in the room. But I really think we need to make an effort to bring other people up around us. I think for me, that's why I'm so passionate about like Equip and Elevate. I really want women that have gone before us to say, okay, how did you navigate being a black woman in corporate? Tell us the tricks. Did you learn how to cycle? Is that how you got a promotion? Because I'm going to learn how to cycle.
Exactly.
You know, did you tell people that I deserve to be here? How did you learn? Because for instance, some of our colleagues have an advantage because they have first generation, third generation that have been in that space, so they can get advice on how to grow. Some of us, you are the first generation entering into that space, so you've got no one that can tell you how to navigate on what to do in order to do well in that space. So I think it's so important to create spaces where we amplify voices of women that have gone before us, and women that are wanting to work with women that are still, you know, building. There's no need for you to take 10 years to do what that other woman did. You can literally say, okay, these are my lessons. It will take you 2 years. It took me 10 years. But let this take you 2 years to get to that stage, because this is what I did a bit differently. Business. I didn't know funding looked like this. I wish I had known I should keep my financials properly in order. When I start raising funding, I need this and this and this and this. You don't have to go through the same journey, and I think we need to start thinking differently about that. But one thing I want to say about you, I was saying the confidence thing. I think that's why I'm saying that maybe if you had done articles before me, maybe I would have had a bit of confidence, because I would have learned from you. Even though you were saying you were going through the most, from the outside, I saw a person that was very still confident. You knew your boundaries. If I go to gym, do not call me, do not contact me, it's my gym time. You didn't, I don't know, you just had clear boundaries. And I always thought to myself, how did Zinhle like get that right? And in my head, I'm like, actually, you've always been that person. I think about when we were in grade 8, when those matrics were doing things as part of initiation, you were very clear about certain things. And even if people made fun of you, you were still clear about certain things. And I think for me, maybe that's a lesson I would have learned from you had you gone before me, to like, actually, articles, the way I navigate them is through being authentic to myself. Because even if they don't work out the way I want them to work out, I know I was true to myself throughout the whole process. And when I leave that journey, leave that season, I'm like, man, I'm proud of who I was, even if I didn't leave the way that maybe I should have left in terms of maybe growing within that firm. But I know I was authentic to myself. I didn't compromise myself. I didn't do all these different things. I was authentic to myself. So that's something that maybe, as I say, I'm observing from outside as someone who's your friend, and I've seen how confident you are. You do a good job being confident if you are. Like,
but I haven't always been confident. Remember when I wanted to go to public speaking, and I don't know, because we first had a debating background, and I remember I was going to give a speech. I wrote my entire speech, and this is why I think our friendship's always been great. It's been competitive, but I could always rely on you to give me feedback, even if I didn't want to accept it. So I remember I had to give a speech in class. I wrote the entire speech. So I asked Ayanda, how did I do? And you're like, you read the entire thing and there was an icon. I was like, no, I didn't. No, but you were right. Because at the time I was doing public speaking in the format of a debater where you do write the points down and eye contact is not important. And like, I think I sat down for a while with some of the like feedback. You actually sat there writing down notes and then you gave me the feedback. And then I was like, okay, then I took it. But it took like a year before I could actually take in what you said. And I realized like throughout my life, there's a lot of times when you gave me good criticism, but I wasn't ready to accept it, because it could have also been a pride thing where I was like, oh, but Ayanda's right, but I don't want to admit that she's right. And then I'd go home and then I'd be like, okay, she's actually got a point. And there was even a time, I don't know if you remember, where I didn't like my gap and I wanted to close my gap. And then you're like, Chuck Bass has got a gap. And I started watching Gossip Girl and I fell in love with Chuck Bass, because you're like, it adds so much character and he's like a charming guy. So like, it's very funny how like from self-image and even with the face, like I grappled with the idea of being a dark beauty or being dark-skinned. And then you always used to be like, oh, but there's so many dark, beautiful women. Like, look at this person. You used to come up, and I wasn't even clued up then on populist culture. Like, I didn't know most of the celebrities, but you'd be like, you need to watch this. You need to see this person. Like, what do you think about this? I didn't even know about Lupita. I think I knew about Lupita from you. So I think it's nice to have somebody that affirms that. And coming back with that, I think with articles, the first 6 months, I would say I was not authentically myself. And then a switch flipped where I was like, when the switch flipped, I was like, I've got nothing to lose. And that's when I regained my power. I was like, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to fire me or they're going to say my articles. Then I was like, I'm willing to take that risk. And then when that unlocked, it was like I was untamed. I was like, no one else is going to mess with me. But it took 6 months of being in a psychologically bad place where I was doubting. I mean, I was under a director who used to ask me like, are you sure you graduated from UCT? Or she'd be like, I can't trust you with my work. You don't write properly. And now I was like, I know I can speak. I mean, I got distinctions at UCT. I graduated only to find out that, you know, sometimes somebody's grappling with their own inner turmoil and then they project it on you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's just also when you know who you are in spaces, when someone is projecting, you know how to block it off. And I think that's where I struggled with. I would internalize those projections and it became about me. And it was never about me because, as I said, like I think a lot of professionals, also people in business, they have so much trauma, man. Like they have a lot of work trauma. And because of that, that's why the space is going to take so long to be healthy and not toxic. And I'm not saying every space. I think, you know, there are companies that have really great company cultures, but I think there's some that don't. And I think that is because, one, the company culture is wrong, but also I think a lot of the people that work there are just so traumatized because people always say, like, the worst treatment I got is from a black professional. Yeah, that hurts. Which for me shows me how much trauma you also have from being maybe the only black person when you first entered there. Now there's a new, you know, group of black people that are coming underneath you and experiencing the worst treatment from you as a black professional versus someone else. And you should be like, listen, this is how I had to navigate, but I want a different reality for you. Exactly. So, yeah, I think we need to change the culture. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And shifting out of career perspective, I need advice from you. You know, I'm happily single. So as life is on another level. I mean, she'll be like, I'm in Cape Town between these days and these days. I'll be in Joburg for 2 days. It's like, I'll come visit your daughter. Yeah. And then I'm just like, your life, you're living life. It has its perks, but I think maybe it's coming to 30 where I'm craving stability now this year. Like I've enjoyed the flexibility of being unattached to spaces, but like some part of me wants like grounding and to be like, where's home? So I think I'm still on a journey. I'm trying to figure out where that is. But like you've got a beautiful love story. I mean, I recall what year it was, 2017. I was still at UCT, so it must have been 2017. Or we might have had this conversation 2016 where you were like, I'm going to get married like next year.
And then I was like, but how? and then, like, I don't know, like, you need to talk me through your dating and love story to the point where you met, I'm allowed to say Mandla, right? Yeah, to the point where you met Mandla and you guys eventually got married. What was that love story like, and what advice do you have for singles like me?
I feel like I'm still learning marriage.
Yeah.
So I met my husband 2016.
It was 2016, yeah.
Because we got married 2018. So I met him 2016. Now we were at a church conference. And
was it love at first sight?
Not for me, but for him, yes.
Obviously.
I can't resist this person.
He did say your smile, that smile of yours.
So, yeah, he just said he knew in the first 5 minutes of meeting me. And then I obviously just after a week of like prayer and time, and I was just like, okay, this is the person I'm meant to be with.
Yeah.
And then literally by the time when we got married, we had known each other for a year. So like from when we met to our wedding date, all of that time was a year. And in the midst of that, he got into an accident, so he was in hospital. So I'm just like,
sure.
It was a lot of faith in the midst of that, and a lot of love to really trust that this is where God wants us to be.
Yeah.
I think the advice I would give for anyone that's currently like in the process of trying to meet someone, I think get rid of your list and just go have.
So no 6-pack anymore.
Wow. So I think one of the things, I love how my husband explains it. There's 4 key things he looks at. What are your values? Because those don't change.
Yeah.
He looks at, are you driven? Are you a passionate, driven person? He looks at how do you, are you close to your family? How's your relationship with your family? And the last one he looks at is, what does it say? How do you take care of yourself?
Sure.
So he was just saying these things don't change. Values don't change. Preferences change. This year you might be into cycling.
Yeah.
And then now you want someone who cycles. And then maybe 2 years from now you want to be a marathon runner. And cycling is like, but now you've based your whole list based on the fact that this person doesn't cycle. And then going back to being driven and wanting more for your life, you want someone who has that self-drive, who takes initiative for their life, because you'll know that they'll always be about looking after themselves, taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that drives into, I think he says, do you like yourself? I think he was just really speaking about, do you take care of yourself? Are you intentional about that? It doesn't mean looking pretty. It's about how you view your health, how you view, all those things, because that feeds into how you take care of yourself. And then the last one, family, because family, if you can't have a good relationship with your family, it's also a problem. But obviously bearing in mind that there are other factors for other people where they've been hurt by family, and that's completely understandable.
Sure.
You might not have a good relationship with your family, but I really think just cutting down that list and looking at what are the values that I look for in a partner. What do I want this person to be like in terms of maybe faith? It's not negotiable. I want someone who is, whatever faith that you might prescribe to.
Yeah.
And those are things that generally don't change. Yes, you get exposed to new things, but that's something that's really core to who you are.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd say allow yourself and meet people, man.
Yeah.
Enjoy. And also, guys, if you're in your 20s and you listen to this, if you're in first year, please don't DM me. Enjoy. I get 21-year-olds saying they want to get married. I'm like... Enjoy your time, enjoy that season, enjoy that, because once you're married, the hope is you're married for life.
Exactly.
But you have all those years with your spouse, but you have a short period of time with yourself. So enjoy being by yourself. Enjoy that season. And I know people used to say that to me. I'm like, you just say that because you're married. But now I actually really understand it, because enjoying spending time by yourself and enjoying the season of maybe just deciding that you're going to travel by yourself for a month is a luxury in certain marriages, because you have to think about your kids if you're a child. You have to think about so many other things. So I really would say enjoy also your season, be present, allow yourself to be present with that specific season, because once another season opens up, you might think about, I spent so much time looking at that season that I missed out on what's happening around me.
Absolutely. And how did you know you were ready to get married? Like, what are the Like, how do I know if I'm ready now? Like, what were your go-to signs to be like, I'm ready now?
I think I just always wanted to get married young.
Yeah, you always wanted to get married and you wanted to have kids. You wanted to have lots of kids at first.
Yeah, no.
And now you probably...
I'm happy with just
Yeah.
I don't know. I think because I've always wanted to get married young, and I think I was mostly surrounded by married people that got married young because of church. So I felt that got instilled in me to be like, I'm also going to be one of those people. But I think on a more practical way, you can't always know yourself when you get married, because you always change. Especially when you get married, you even change more so, and you need to allow your spouse to change with you. But I think one of the things I would say to someone, I think really evaluate of whether you understand and know who you are. I think that's very important. I think a lot of women, when they get married, they tend to not know themselves in some instances. And then you move into that space and you end up like just wanting to please your spouse. Then 10 years later, you wake up and you feel like you're so depressed because I've had to live a life of like trying to impress my spouse. I haven't been sort of authentic and true to who I am. Yeah. And then you go through that process, because they say that women are actually the ones that are mostly, I think 60%, oh no, I'm lying, maybe 80% of divorces are filed by women.
Sure.
And for me, that's
high.
That's high. One, men don't leave their wives.
Yeah.
Like
they'd rather stay, stick it out.
And like they'll rather have all these other, this is not about that. Yeah. But I'm just saying, for me, it just also speaks back to how we sometimes compromise ourselves, because society tells us to compromise ourselves, and you really don't have to compromise yourself. I think one thing my husband likes saying is that if you want to be with someone, you need to say, do I have unconditional acceptance of this person? Sure. Because that means that you accept that person without having to try to change them in any way. Yeah. Maybe you hate that this person is like always late. Yeah. I'm making an example. Yeah. And then that becomes it's one of the things I don't like. Maybe I'll change it with time. And if you can't change him and he's like that, what happens? Exactly. So I think it's also being in a space, can I unconditionally accept this person as they are without changing them? And if they do change, great. Yeah. But if they don't, can I live with this person like that? And I think that's also another thing when you look at someone. But I think more so, just really fall in love with yourself, be present with yourself, allow yourself to grow, and really say, who is Ayanda? Because if you understand that person, it's very hard to compromise that person in something like that. And yes, marriage is about compromising like certain things, but I don't think you need to compromise who you are. Yeah.
And you know what? You put it so beautifully. I think over time I used to have a list, and now it's shifted to like values, and I'm more open-minded in terms of what I'm looking for. But what I also admire about your marriage with Manda, it's like you're two separate individuals. So there's other couples that are just like glued to each other, and you don't, like, there's a merging of identities and you can't tell them apart, which I think can be a bit toxic. But the fact that you guys have separate friends, you've got like your own driven goals, like he's doing his own stuff, you're doing, but you still come together and build the marriage together. I think that is beautiful, because you still preserve who Ayanda is. Like if I'm with you, I don't feel like, oh, I'm with Mandla. It's like I know Ayanda the individual, and I know Ayanda and Mandla as a couple, which is absolutely beautiful. How have you guys, was that like a deliberate, conscious thing to be like, just because we're getting married doesn't mean we need to do every single thing together?
I don't think it was like we didn't consciously sit down and say, you do your own thing, I'm going to do my own thing. Yeah. I think there are parts where we meet together, where we really need to partner in those things. But also I think we really understand that we have different interests. And I remember what he used to say is that just because you're my best friend does not mean that I'm your best friend. And because you might not, also another thing he likes saying, that just because I like something, you might not like that thing, and that's okay. Yeah. And the reason why I'm saying those things is that it allows you freedom to not be so upset when maybe you like hiking, he doesn't. Yeah. And then like you guys are like always fighting about hiking. Yeah. And for me, it's just more important to look at also what are we most importantly, more aligned around, and how do we become more intentional about making sure that that's our key thing together. And there's nothing wrong with us having different interests. There's nothing wrong with us having different friends. Because when I come back home, I tell him, I'm like, yo, Zintle. Okay, not everything. Like, there's certain things people like, this do not tell. Like, I will not tell, I promise. This is, I'll tell him this, but not that. But I think it's also important that we do come back to each other, even though we do have different interests. But what I really love is that he allows me to be, and that's what I love.
Yeah.
If tomorrow I just want to do something different, he's like, go ahead. I mean, when I said I wanted to start a podcast, he went the next week, I think, bought me mics, and then I was like, oh, like at that time I was just saying out loud, and then I was like, okay, I think I wanted to be visual. What does that mean? He went and got me mic stands. So I think he allows me to be, even though he's not in that space. You know, he knows that it's important to me. So he'll find ways to allow me to be. And that's what is so important. I think it's freedom more than anything.
And it's so beautiful to witness, because I remember when you guys when you were engaged as well, because you were taking lots of photos, he would be there. Like, he wouldn't mind being in the background. You know how difficult it is to get a man to take good photos. So you'd be like, no, everyone, I'll take the pictures. You're taking initiative. So to have that proactive support, to be like, this is what makes my wife happy, and even if I don't like it, I'm going to step up and help her and make sure that she flourishes in that space, is quite rare. Well, I'm finding in the single space, it's rare to find. Maybe it switches once a person is married to a particular person. But also now bringing you back, you just reached the 3rd floor. I still can't believe you're technically older than me. Like, in my mind, we're the same age.
We're the same age. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, like, we're not the same age. I was born in 93 before, democracy. So, respect me.
You went through the struggle for 1 year. So in your wisdom of that 1 year and everything that you've encountered, now that you're on the 3rd floor, looking back in your 20s, is there anything you wish you could have done differently? Or if somebody could take you back, especially for people that haven't reached age 30 yet, is there anything you would change? Is there anything that you've been reflecting upon, especially, let me say last year when you were about to turn 30 and you were like looking back? I don't know if you do those like reflection on your birthday when you're like,
something I'm trying to do. So what I reflect a lot on is my career. And what I need to do to be better. But in terms of Ayanda, personal growth, something I generally just like, I go to church, God will help me. I don't generally sit down, but I've been more intentional about reflecting. So I think something in going to my 30s, one of the key things that I want to be intentional about is my personal growth. And being intentional about being obsessed with radical transformation that is more personal. And, I'm reading like your Raman Sharma, those Jay Shetty's. I really want to invest in my personal growth outside my faith, obviously. And also investing time in not only just my personal growth through self-reflection, but also, being surrounded by, if I need to see a therapist, and being intentional about seeing a therapist, not because I'm in a bad space, but because I need to sit down with someone to be like, okay, this is where I am at in life. What are your thoughts? Another thing that I'm doing, walking to my 30s, I'm just getting to a point of saying no is enough of an answer. I don't need to explain.
You don't need to validate
I don't need to validate my no. I don't need to give an explanation. It's enough.
Sure.
So I think that is my thing, and I'm excited about that, because I'm like, we've been, and I'm actually been practicing. So I've had to cancel something, not just because I just didn't feel right about doing it. And usually I would do this long paragraph, and I was like, I'm not able to do it. I apologized, and I just left it there. I
Sure.
just didn't align with what the person wanted me to do. And I think for me, that was enough. And I felt so much freedom because I didn't feel like I had to over-explain. I had to like try, make sure that the person's also okay, because sometimes people don't think about you.
Yeah.
Also, you know, thinking about myself more so is very important. And another thing, when I saw that question, I was like, what else? I think I want to live more audaciously.
Yeah.
I'm all about that, like living in that kind of being audacious. But I think I want to do so in my decisions and really pursuing them wholeheartedly. I think sometimes we think about people around us.
Yeah.
We think about, just thinking about people. So I think for me, really pursuing an audacious life and making sure that the decisions I make are reflective of my purpose, are reflective of my decision, are reflective of my goals and stuff.
Yeah.
And I really aligned with my values.
Sure.
And man, I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Hey, I think we all are. I know I am too.
I am going to be putting myself back and reflecting, saying, man, was that decision because you were pleasing someone, or is it because you were being gracious and being kind?
Yeah.
Because those are two different things. You know? So I think that's something that I really want to be about as I move into my 30s.
Yeah.
And just being intentional about just reflecting on that thing, because my goodness, you'll find yourself in this hole and not be free, because once you get rid of that, there's freedom, right? So for me, I really want to grow more in not being too worried about that, but moving towards what does it look like if Ayanda is okay. And
that's powerful. Like, I'm hoping when I get to my third floor, I'll also be, because I'm grappling with that, and I know that decisions that I make or the yeses that I say because they're a result of people pleasing, they drain me, man. You'll commit to going for tea with somebody you don't want to see, and you're sitting there for 4 hours, and afterwards you can't do anything because it just emotionally sucked all the energy out of you.
And I think for me, that's also that, like, I think I'm also being very intentional about people in my space now. My goodness. One, I don't have time this year because I'm studying.
Busy woman.
And I'm a mom.
Yes,
which is
congratulations.
My first priority. Listen, having a baby, that's why I've slept at 2. She wants your attention. You're trying to work on something. So you have to hold her and play with her. The minute your eyes are somewhere else, she'll be like... and then you have to look back and be like, I'm still here and stuff. So, and then now your time is like, you know, now you have to do your work after she slept because you want to be present. So
the cutest baby, but for me, she looks so sweet. Like, she doesn't cry that much, but I'm not there at night. So, in all fairness,
she's very sweet. But I think also I'm going to be also intentional about the people I keep around me. I don't have to be friends with everyone because I don't want to hurt people.
Yeah.
If that friendship for that season, it was what it was, that's great.
Yeah.
We learned what we needed to learn. I don't need to keep holding on to that if it's no longer the friendship for this season, because what it does is you're able to focus on the people around you, and you're able to focus on yourself, you're able to focus on your family, on the career. You're not trying to hold on to these core friendships, but you're also trying to make sure you maintain these other ones that you're not too sure about. And, you know, you're just keeping them around because you don't want to hurt people, because you just have to. It's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the right thing to do because you're doing both of you guys are doing an injustice to each other, because they're also in a different phase where letting go is very important. So I think for me, I'm just really letting go of friendships that no longer serve me. Relationships that no longer serve me, and just really keeping my circle very tight and intentional. And
has that been easy? I find that those are painful, but maybe it's because I actually do an official breakup where I go, listen, this friendship's is not working. Then 2 months I'm like getting chest pains where I think about what I said. Like I had a friend and I invited her and we ate, and I was like, look, I can't give you what you want, but like, you know, if it's life or death, I can be there, but I'm saying I can't show up in the way that you need me to show up as a friend. And I think I've said this speech to like 4 or 5 different people where I was like, I've got no friends left. I think end of last year I told you, I was like, I'm down to like 4 people now.
You said that. And I admire that. This is what I love about it. I think you really, and this is one thing about you, you're so, if you believe in something, convicted in something, you're going to do it that way. You won't move like this. You feel like it's time to close this chapter at work. You're not going to do this. Yes, you'll go through your own but they won't push you out. You'll push them out first. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you actually say no to something first before someone says no to you. For me, it's been a journey because I'm so scared to sometimes hurt people. I remember writing down, this was 2 years ago when I turned 20, and I wrote down a list. And I had just gone through one of the most difficult times in my life, and I wrote down a list, and I was like, these are my core friends. These are friends that I'm just like, even if I see them once a year, it's okay. And even if I speak to them once a year, it's okay. And it's actually not okay. I should just
cut them off.
Cut it off, you know. And then,
but it's hard because you attach to those people, you become like sisters, and it almost feels like your souls are tied because when there's that breaking, you feel it emotionally in your spirit. No, it's not easy. I mean, like, I think I always say now I believe in a crying weekend, where you go away and you just cry. Because I went away, this is the very same time when I did this list, and I thought I was going to do like self-reflection, come back empowered. I had Robin Sharma, I had all the empowering books. I had notebooks. You went like an Oprah retreat.
I was on an Oprah retreat. God messed with my heart. I was crying literally almost every single hour, writing down things. I didn't come back energized, but I came back lighter because I had let go of things. And I think that for me was very important. I'm like, shucks, I need to do this more often. I need to have retreats, one where I cry like crazy, but I also let go because the weight becomes lighter. And
I think that's maybe that's also why a lot of people like gravitate towards you, or like why you find so many people in your friendship circle or wanting to become friends with you. I think you genuinely touch people's hearts, because if I look at myself, you softened me up. Because I remember I didn't like hugging people, and then Ayanda came and you always used to like hug me, and I'd be like, oh, this is so weird. And then even texting, I never used to text with emojis, and then that's something I got, you'd be like, Zinta, your text is so plain, like I show some emotion. And I learned that, and I think you really meet people and you tap into their hearts and you stay there. And maybe that's why a lot of people always gravitate towards you and they want to be near you. They're like attracted, you're like a magnet. People want to gravitate towards you because your spirit is in a good place. Like you're genuinely, like, even when I looked, I think when we had your baby shower and I looked at the circle of women that you're surrounded by, and I was like, it makes sense. And that's why for me, I would say in high school, you were my best friend, and then it shifted out. And I was like, I'm so happy you're surrounded by different people that could fulfill you in ways that I couldn't. And I think that is beautiful with friendship, that you never need to feel like you need to have exclusive hold over the person. Like they must be the person you go to for business advice, for what's going on. Because there's places that I can't fill where it's like marriage related. I can't tell you what happens in a marriage. I know nothing about babies. Like I could Google stuff, but that's as far as it goes. But it's so beautiful if you've got sisters that hold your hands in those areas.
Yeah, and I think that for me, what's been so good, I mean, like for instance, when I look at how our friendship, I think when I meet with you, I'm inspired. I'm like, damn.
I think it's the same on both sides.
I'm like, I need to sit down and plan things now, you know? Yeah. And I remember even thinking about, I actually didn't tell you this, when I was thinking about doing my master's again, I'm like, I've got a newborn baby. Yeah. You know, it's a different phase in my life. And I thought to myself, I know I'm not meant to say this, you'll edit it out if you have to. I'm like, Cynthia did 2 masters at one time. I mean, until they found out. 2 masters at one time. I'm just like, I can do it. I'm like, and I remember that was like one of my thinking, like, yo, if you could do 2 masters at one time, and I know you had to stop at some point, but for me, the ability to do that, I was just like, nothing is stopping me. All I need to do is plan my time properly, and I'll be able to do it in the midst of this new season in my life.
No, I think that's actually, it's nice because it also works in the reverse. Because when I was also starting my podcast, I was like, okay, I need advice from Ayanda. And my sister, like, we watch your podcast, so she'd be like, I'd be like, yeah, that's my friend. And she'd be like, yeah, Ayanda's got a new release, or Ayanda's interviewing this person. So I'd be like, and even today when I was like, oh, I'm officially finally interviewing Ayanda, because literally when I launched, she was like, when are you going to interview Ayanda? And I'm like, wait, I need to build up so that by the time I get Ayanda on the show, it's like a decent enough show. So I'm so grateful that I've had that inspiration with you throughout the years. Before we close, my second last question is how are you managing it all, and what can we expect from you, like in terms of Equip and Elevate this year, career? What can we expect for Ayanda the brand, Ayanda the person for 2024?
So I don't believe in balance. I think this whole thing, you can balance everything. I think it leads to burnout. I think there's just season when something is more important, and that's how I've seen like my life. There's seasons when I have to stop something to focus on something, so that I'm still fully present as a wife, I'm still fully present as a mother, as a friend, as a daughter, and all of those things. Because if I'm trying to be everyone and everything at once, things will suffer, and generally what suffers is our relationships. So for me, it's just planning better, being intentional about planning my year, and that's exactly what I've done this year. And there's so many exciting things for Equip and Elevate, guys.
Ooh, okay. Are you allowed to share with us?
Yes, I am excited. We're gonna do things differently this year.
Okay.
It's going to be like series we run each month. We're gonna do giveaways, we're gonna do challenges, and we're starting in Feb. We have an amazing lineup of women, and our luncheon is coming back on the 25th of September.
I need to join I missed one last year, and it looked like it was amazing.
And I think you're gonna love the lineup. I'll tell you on the side. And so there's gonna be exciting things. So if you haven't heard of my podcast, so make sure you go search Equip and Elevate. And there's so many exciting things. Career-wise, I think I'm more focused on sort of building through upskilling. So my master's has become very important. Then I'm back at work, maternity leave.
You're gonna miss your little one.
Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I'm just like, I think that's sort of what I have planned for the year and my focus.
So why interview just women and not include men in Equip and Elevate?
Actually, I'm going to have men this year. I have men that follow Equip and Elevate.
Oh, wow.
So many men have sent me DMs. They've posted about Equip and Elevate.
Sure.
So I think the women was more giving access to a group of people that I feel like don't have maybe as much opportunities. Or we still need to sort of build because of systemic things that I don't want to go into that now because of time. But I think my passion has women, and how do we elevate women? How do we equip women and help them in that journey, and just play a small part, even if it's like a small part of that journey. But now we are going to have men. Because we do have men following.
I think it's beautiful. Like, I love the fact that, because I'd never seen a podcast where it was solely focused on women, and so for the first time, like, I gained perspective, and you feel empowered listening to the different women, and for them to be given that platform to share their stories is beautiful. And I think it'll be interesting now when you're adding men to see how men are supporting women in their different roles. Are they making great allies? Because we need men.
We need allies, guys. You can't tell me that you are for women, but you're not an ally.
And in closing, Ayanda, we have a podcast tradition. So thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. But if you could give 3 pieces of advice to people navigating their 20s, what would you say?
I think it's important to understand your purpose, live audaciously, and stay true to who you are.
Thank you so much for joining us in today's podcast. We really had a wonderful conversation with Ayanda. If you would like to comment or just discuss some of the insights that Ayanda shared in today's podcast, you can follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course on TikTok. We will be there for comments. Make sure that you rate us on your preferred podcast platform, be it YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And tune in until our next episode. Keep navigating and keep moving.